we at 12 o'clock? Good morning, or I should say good afternoon, everybody. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, main estimates 2017-18, Vote 1 under Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Vote 1 under Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, Vote 1 and 5 under Department of Employment and Social Development, referring to the committee on Thursday, February 23rd, 2017. Very pleased to welcome the Honourable Minister Duclos, Minister Patty Hajdu, and Minister Carla Qualtrough to join us here today, along with witnesses from each of the departments. Welcome. We have some familiar faces here. We should be getting frequent flyer miles to be on this for this committee. We will be starting with opening statements of 10 minutes from each of the ministers, starting with Minister Duclos. The next 10 minutes are yours, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Excuse me, we have a point of order. I apologize. Yes,
Just, my apologies for interrupting. Do we have hard copies of the presentation, the speech, that could be distributed?
They're being distributed as we speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Minister Duclos.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm very pleased to be here today as Minister of Families, Children and Social Development at Employment and Social Development Canada, which is also known as ESDC, to talk about the main estimates for our department. I would like to start by congratulating the members of the committee for your excellent work.
Months, and I look forward to receiving your report and your recommendations, which will feed into the consultations on the Canadian Poverty Reduction Strategy. Your counsel will be crucial for our collective engagement to reduce poverty in Canada. J'ai aussi le privilège d'être en compagnie de mes collègues.
I have the privilege to be joined by my colleagues, the Honourable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour, as well as the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities. I'm also joined by public servants representing the various sectors of ESDC, who will be able to help me answer some of your questions.
A broad overview of our priorities and progress thus far. I will begin by highlighting our resolute commitment to grow the middle class and reduce poverty. Then I will describe in more detail our actions to support families and communities, notably our investments in children, childcare, seniors, and housing. My top priority as the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, and the top priority of Prime Minister Trudeau, is growing the middle class and helping more Canadians join it. Every single Canadian deserves a fair and real chance at success. La classe moyenne est confrontée à des...
The middle class is facing real challenges. It is also feeling the impact of economic and technological changes around the world. We also know that a stronger middle class leads to a more prosperous society. We are committed to helping Canadians who are working hard to join the middle class. Last October, I presented a discussion paper entitled Towards a Poverty Reduction Strategy to accompany your work on the first Canadian Poverty Reduction Strategy in Canadian history. In parallel with that work, we have launched 3 large initiatives that will support the Canadian Poverty Reduction Strategy. These are the Tackling Poverty Together research project, the process of consulting Canadians, and the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Poverty, for which we recently put out a call for nominations.
Imperative to grow the middle class and reduce poverty. Now, allow me to describe some of the policies we are currently pursuing to make this happen. Let's start with how we are supporting families, and for that I will focus first on the Canada Child Benefit and our support to childcare and early learning. Our most important accomplishment to date is, without doubt, the launch of the Canada Child Benefit. the most important social policy innovation in a generation. The CCB is a simpler, tax-free, better targeted, and more generous benefit to help Canadian families with the cost of raising children. En juillet 2016, environ...
In July 2016, about 3.2 million Canadian families received their first payment. Also, 9 out of 10 Canadian families are receiving an average of $2,300 more in non-taxable child benefits per year, compared with the previous complicated and unfair system. This measure, I should say, is reducing child poverty by 40% and will lead to the lowest level of child poverty in Canadian history. As you know, we also aim to create childcare services that are affordable, high quality, flexible, and genuinely inclusive. In Budget 2016, we committed $500 million towards this goal, including $100 million for Indigenous early learning and childcare. And over the past year, we have worked with the provinces and territories to develop a framework on early learning and childcare, the first such framework agreement on the history of our country. We have also had discussions with Indigenous people to develop a distinct Indigenous framework on early learning and childcare. The framework will take into account the specific needs and priorities of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children and families. Budget 2017 plans to invest an additional $7 billion over 10 years to support and create affordable, high-quality childcare spaces across the country.
Child benefit and its child care will help Canadian families and children succeed. Now, please allow me to turn to our significantly increased support for seniors. L'âge d'admissibilité aux prestations de la Sécurité.
The eligibility age for old age security and guaranteed income supplement benefits was returned to 65, back down from 67. This change will prevent 100,000 seniors from falling into severe poverty each year. Automatic enrollment for old age security was also expanded, eliminating the requirement to apply for benefits for 60% of seniors. We also increased the maximum amount of the supplement top-up to $947 per year for the most vulnerable single seniors. We are also working to reach as many seniors as possible, seniors who are entitled to the supplement but who are not yet receiving it. We are making significant effort to contact as many senior citizens as possible. Old age security and the Canadian Pension Plan are a part of Canada's flagship social programs that millions of Canadians rely on every day. We want to make it easier and fair for them to access the benefits.
Seniors deserve to retire and to live in dignity. I would now like to talk about new investments in our communities. Nos collectivités sont au cœur de notre...
Communities are at the heart of our country, and quality social infrastructure is essential to making them good places to live. That means reliable public transit, leisure and cultural infrastructure, water treatment facilities, affordable housing, and early learning and childcare. In Budget 2016, we announced an initial investment of $3.4 billion over 5 years in social infrastructure. And in Budget 2017, we just announced an additional investment of $21.9 billion over 11 years. This will allow us to continue to support social infrastructure in Canadian communities. Let me focus on the importance of making housing more affordable and of reducing homelessness. Our vision is for every Canadian to have access to housing that meets their needs and is affordable.
Housing is a cornerstone of building sustainable, inclusive communities and a strong Canadian economy where we can all prosper and thrive. Le budget de 2016 incluait des investissements majeurs de 2,3 milliards de dollars sur 2 ans à cet égard. En tant que ministre responsable de la société,
As Minister responsible for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or the CMHC, I also want to point out that we held nationwide consultations on a new national housing strategy and that a report on what we heard was published. In Budget 2017, we announced an investment of over $11.2 billion over 11 years in a variety of initiatives that aim to build, renovate, and repair the housing stock in Canada. They will also ensure that Canadians have affordable housing that meets their needs.
doubling in that context of long-term engagement our investments in the homelessness partnering strategy for a total investment of $2.1 billion over the next 11 years. When someone is forced to live on the streets, we are indeed all diminished. Monsieur le Président et chers membres du Comité,
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, as you can see, we have made remarkable progress over the last year. But we are well aware that the work is only just beginning and that we have a lot more to accomplish. But I am confident that we are on the right track. Our initiatives are helping advance the government's main program, which is strengthening the middle class and helping those who are working hard to join it.
to give every Canadian a real and fair chance to succeed, everyone's contribution and everyone's collaboration is important. And I therefore look forward to a frank and instructive and constructive dialogue this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues.
Thank you, Minister Duclos. Now over to Minister Haiju for the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a great pleasure for me to be here before you and all of the members of the committee for the first time as the new Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour. And I look forward to discussing my responsibilities regarding Employment and Social Development Canada's portion of the main estimates tabled on February 23, 2017. Lorsque j'ai accepté mon mandat,
In accepting my mandate as a new minister, I knew that both my personal and my work-life experiences would give me a good perspective.
and among many other things, includes a focus on ensuring skill development, and in particular, lifelong skills, as you've heard our government talking about. And this is very personal for me because as the first in my family to receive a post-secondary education, in fact, I was able to break intergenerational cycle of poverty. Comme vous le savez, emploi et développement.
As you know, ESDC delivers a range of programs and services that affect Canadians throughout their lives. My focus within the department is twofold: to help all Canadians access the right skills and training to find and to keep good jobs, and to ensure that when Canadians are at work, they are fairly compensated, their rights are protected, and their environment is safe.
To our government's goal of growing Canada's economy by strengthening the middle class and helping those who are working so hard to join it. And I'm pleased to be able to share with you some of the work that we're doing to deliver on this commitment. So let me start with our youth. We know that Canada's prosperity is increasingly going to depend on creating a path to success in education and in employment for our young people. Our government's first budget, Budget 2016, tackled this challenge head-on by making unprecedented investments in the youth employment strategy, including a commitment to create more Canada Summer jobs for youth than ever before. And I'm very pleased that further funding over 3 years has been pledged in Budget 2017 to continue our work. Combined with Budget 2016 measures, these investments will help more than 33,000 vulnerable youth develop the skills they need to find work or go back to school, create 15,000 new green jobs for young Canadians, and provide over 1,600 new employment opportunities for youth in the heritage sector. Our government knows that a highly skilled and flexible, adaptable workforce is critical for strong middle class. And that's why we've delivered on our commitment to invest more in skills and training, apprenticeships, and access to post-secondary education. Now, one of the most promising career paths that we don't talk about enough for young Canadians today is the skilled trades. And as the parent of a young welder, I can tell you this firsthand. And that's why our government is supporting union-based apprenticeship training, which will give more people the opportunity to start their career in these sectors. And I'm particularly focused on encouraging more women to pursue careers in the trades, critical to closing that gender wage gap that we've heard about time and time again. We've also addressed the importance of demand-driven education and training through the Work Integrated Learning Program. We're investing in partnerships between employers and post-secondary education institutions. And the goal is simple, to align education and training with employer needs. Through Budget 2017, we're also investing in organizations like MyTax so they can nearly triple their co-op placements. This gives young people that critical on-the-job experience that so many employers are looking for on a resume. Our government will also be doing more to help adult learners retrain or upgrade their skills to adapt to a changing market, turning challenges into opportunities and increasing people's earning potential. By showing leadership in a time of change, we're ensuring that every Canadian can be more confident that the next job is indeed a better job. When it comes to making post-secondary education more affordable, we've accomplished a lot in the past year. Our very first budget included many measures to make post-secondary education more affordable for students from low to middle-income families and make debt loads more manageable. And we've built on those investments in Budget 2017. We've increased Canada's student grants and are continuing to expand their eligibility with both Budget 2016 and Budget 2017. We've brought in a flat-rate student contribution, and we've improved loan repayment assistance so that no graduate will have to start repaying their loans until they're earning a minimum of $25,000. I also believe strongly that we need to generate opportunities for those who are traditionally underrepresented in the workplace. People like Indigenous people, newcomers to Canada, people with disabilities, and women. And that's why I'm so proud that Budget 2017 also builds on our government's investment in skills and training for Indigenous people. Indigenous people are the fastest growing segment of our workforce, and their success in finding and keeping good, well-paying jobs is critical to Canada's growth. I also want to take a moment to recognize the members of this committee for the hard work that you undertook last summer to study the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. I know that you spent a great deal of time hearing witnesses, constructing recommendations, and drafting the report. And I want to express my thanks and tell you that your recommendations have played a very real role in our work to improve the program. In December, the Minister of Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees and my predecessor as Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour took early action to respond to the report by announcing 4 new measures: an end to the 4-in, 4-out rule, a commitment to a pathway to permanence, an extension of the cap for low-wage workers in seasonal industries, and increased requirements for employers to advertise available jobs to the Canadian workforce before they can apply to bring in a temporary foreign worker. This week, Minister Hassan and I were pleased to announce further measures our government is taking to improve the temporary foreign worker program. Budget 2017 provides an investment of $279.8 million over 5 years, starting in 2017-18, and $49.8 million per year thereafter, to support the continued delivery of this program, as well as the International Mobility Program. Our goal is always to ensure that Canadians have the first opportunity at available jobs, and to that end, we're taking 2 new key steps. First, employers will be required to do more on targeting the recruitment of Canadian workers, particularly those who are typically underrepresented in our workforce, like women, Indigenous people, and people with disabilities. And the government will work with industry sectors that are heavy users of the program to create Canadian workforce development strategies in partnership with employers, organized labour, and other stakeholders. To fulfill our commitment to better protect vulnerable foreign workers, we will also increase on-site and spot inspections of workplaces employing foreign workers and work with community organizations who have been devoted to protecting vulnerable foreign workers to ensure these workers are informed of their rights and protections. In my capacity as Minister of Labour, I'm very proud to be overseeing the passage of Bill C-4, which is currently before the Senate. As you know, our government was elected on a commitment to restore fairness and balance to labour relations in Canada, and that is why Bill C-4 is one of the first pieces of legislation that our government put forward. We're also on track to introduce proactive pay equity legislation for the federal jurisdiction in 2018. Consultation on key design elements of a proactive pay equity system that works for everyone will begin with stakeholders and experts this spring. This legislation will help address the gender-based wage discrimination related to the undervaluation of work traditionally performed by women, which will contribute to equality and fairness for all Canadians, particularly those in the middle class and the many people who work so hard to join it. Budget 2017 also laid out our government's commitment to help workers balance the competing personal and professional responsibilities in their lives. We will be introducing legislation to give federally regulated workers the right to request flexible work arrangements from their employers, a measure that we know from other jurisdictions can have positive impacts on increasing productivity, lower turnover, and lower absenteeism. With Budget 2017, we're also introducing a new investment of $13 million over 5 years to strengthen and modernize compliance and enforcement mechanisms under the Canada Labour Code. These enhancements will help ensure that workers are treated fairly and protected from harm in the workplace. Plusieurs objectifs de ma lettre de...
A lot in my mandate later has already been accomplished. The steps we are taking are already having a real positive impact on our economy and for Canadians. We are more optimistic, and with good reason. Forecasters are expecting Canada's economy to grow even faster. After 10 years of weak job growth, our country is coming off the best 6 months of job growth in a decade. Almost 250,000 jobs have been created. But we are not done. There is much work left to do, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you in the coming years to do the best we can for Canadians in every part of our country.
And positive impact on our economy and for Canadians. Optimism is on the rise, and with good reason. Forecasters are expecting Canada's economy to grow even faster. In the last 8 months alone, the Canadian economy has created over 250,000 full-time jobs. Canadian businesses are hiring again because they're confident in our plan for creating long-term growth. But we're not done. There is a lot of work to do, and I am looking forward to working with each and every one of you in the coming years to do the best that we can for Canadians in every corner of our country. Monsieur le Président, c'est ainsi.
Mr. Chairman, I will conclude my preliminary remarks, and I will have great pleasure in taking your questions. Thank you very much.
10 minutes, please.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here today with my colleagues Minister Duclos and Minister Hajdu, and to speak to the 2017-2018 main estimates funding for disability programs, as well as to update you on the progress I have made in my mandate as Minister of Sports and Person with Disabilities. I have also asked senior officials from ESDC to be here today to answer any questions that you may have. As you know, our government has spent the last year working to strengthen the middle class and to support those working hard to join it. Our objective is a Canada where everyone can participate in society and in the economy, and where everyone has an equal chance of succeeding. This includes Canadians with disabilities. In my capacity as Minister responsible for people with disabilities, my priority over the last year has been the engagement process to inform the development of federal accessibility legislation. Once in place, the legislation will eliminate systemic barriers and deliver equal opportunities for Canadians living with disabilities. I am pleased to report that the engagement process, the largest, broadest consultation on disability issues in over 2 decades, was completed on February 28, 2017. The process involved 18 public engagement sessions held in cities across Canada, 9 roundtable discussions with academic experts, industry representatives, and disability stakeholders, a national youth forum, and an online consultation. The consultation process at a high standard for accessibility. Canadians were able to participate in the language and format of their choice. Languages included English, French, American Sign Language, and Langue des Signes Québécoise, while formats included in-person, online, handwritten, video, or audio. Materials were available in multiple formats, and all public engagement events had real-time captioning, sign language interpretation, in ASL and LSQ, as well as other communication supports. In all, approximately 6,000 Canadians participated, either in person or online. An analysis of the feedback from these consultations is currently underway, and we plan to release the summary publicly later this spring. The report will be used to inform the development of legislation. Once the legislation is drafted, the bill will pass through the regular parliamentary process and will be voted on by Parliament. The public consultation process was funded through existing departmental resources. In addition, Budget 2016 provided $2 million over 2 years for stakeholders to undertake complementary engagement opportunities within their communities. 5 national disability projects comprised of multiple partner organizations, as well as 3 Indigenous organizations, were funded through Budget 2016 in order to engage their members. The funding is continuing through 2017-18 as part of the main estimates. While the engagement process has been our top priority this year, it is only one part of a broader Government of Canada efforts to increase the inclusion of persons with disabilities.
Supports the capital costs of construction and renovations related to improving physical accessibility and safety for people with disabilities in Canadian communities and workplaces, and it has an annual budget of $15 million. Budget 2016 committed to providing an additional $4 million over 2 fiscal years starting in 2016-2017 to support a minimum of 80 additional small community projects. As a result of the 2016 call for proposals under the EAF, 573 projects were approved under the program's workplace and community accessibility streams. This includes 85 additional projects that were funded out of the extra $2 million allocated for 2016-17 through Budget 2016. We expect this work will continue as Budget 2017 proposes providing the EAF with an additional $77 million over 10 years starting in 2018-2019 to improve the safety and accessibility of community spaces and workplaces through the second phase of social infrastructure investments. Now, as you know, the government works to help people with disabilities participate in the labour market through initiatives such as the Opportunities Funds, which provides funding of over $40 million annually. This program supports labour market outcomes for Canadians with disabilities by providing more youth with work experience, involving community organizations and employers in the design and delivery of programming, providing more hands-on work experience and targeted employment supports, promoting social innovation, and establishing measurable outcomes. We also have the Social Development Partnerships Program Disability Component, or the SSPPD, which supports not-for-profit organizations in their work to improve the participation and integration of people with disabilities in all aspects of Canadian society. The SDPPD is in the midst of a program renewal. The goal of the renewal is to design a program that is current and relevant to the disability community and that supports the capability of the disability sector as a whole. The amount of funding under the renewed program will remain the same at $11 million per year. Each year, the Government of Canada also transfers $222 million to the provinces and territories under the labour market agreements for persons with disabilities to improve the employment prospects for persons with disabilities. As announced in Budget 2017, the labour market agreements for persons with disabilities will be consolidated with the Canada Job Fund and the Targeted Initiative for Older Workers into new workforce development agreements. The budget proposed to invest an additional $900 million over the next 6 years in these consolidated agreements. We will work with the provinces and territories to ensure that the new agreements continue to support employment programming for persons with disabilities. A strong performance measurement strategy will allow the federal government to monitor and report to Canadians on the labour market outcomes for this population. Now, as you know, the Canada Disability Savings Grants and Bonds are savings initiatives that come under the Registered Disability Savings Plan. In the main estimates 2017-2018 budget, funding has increased for the Canada Disability Savings Grants and Bonds by $107 million. This increase is due to the steady increase in total registered plans and participation in the program, which is very good news. Participation in the program last year was about 24% of those eligible to claim the disability tax credit, which is a key condition for opening an RDSP. But more work needs to be done in this area. To encourage more people to open RDSPs, we've been working with the Canada Revenue Agency to send letters to Canadians with disabilities who qualified to claim the disability tax credit, but who have yet to open a plan. After a targeted mail campaign that was conducted in November 2015, we saw a 400% increase in the number of plans opened in December 2015 over the previous year. So the increase in spending on the program is partly due to the success of this mail campaign. We also had great news in December of 2016. The Government of Canada announced that it would begin taking steps toward consideration of accession to the optional protocol to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Convention already plays an important role in ensuring people with disabilities across Canada have equal access and opportunity in their communities and their workplaces. The optional protocol establishes procedures aimed at strengthening the implementation and monitoring of the Convention. We're currently engaged in a federal review process and in consultations with provincial and territorial governments who have an important role to play in considering our possible accession to the optional protocol. Consultations with civil society and Indigenous organizations were recently completed in March of 2017. In accordance with Canada's usual practice on treaty ratification, the decision on acceding to the optional protocol will be put formally to the federal ministers and the Prime Minister. If there is a favourable decision, the optional protocol would be tabled in Parliament and the Government of Canada would seek the formal support of all provincial and territorial governments for accession. We're working toward completion of this process in 2018. Je suis fière de dire que le Canada est...
I'm proud to say that Canada is a place where everyone has a shot at success because we have the confidence and leadership to invest in Canadians. As the Minister responsible for people with disabilities, I look forward to the continued work on new planned accessibility legislation. Once in place, the legislation will give us the opportunity and the means to build a truly inclusive society. I hope this update on our planned expenditures in the main estimates, as well as our efforts to promote inclusion and to remove barriers for Canadians with disabilities, has been useful. I trust it has reiterated our commitment to continuing this work over the coming year. My colleagues and I would be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
As everybody can see, the bells are going. I'm looking for unanimous consent so that we can actually get in maybe a few questions before we have to head into the House. Yes, excellent. First up, MP Poilievre.
Minister Duclos, your mandate letter from the Prime Minister instructed you to, quote, lead the development of a Canadian poverty reduction strategy that sets targets to reduce poverty and measure and publicly report on our progress. To repeat, you are charged to measure and publicly report on progress on poverty. Your department created the Market Basket Measure. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Stats Canada says it is a measure of low income based on the cost of specified basket of goods and services representing a modest basic standard of living. Can you tell me if food, shelter, transportation are included in the market basket needed for a basic standard of living?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm delighted for the occasion to link my former life with my current privilege of being with you today. In my former life,
in either of those two lives, were you able to learn whether food, shelter, or transportation are included in the market basket measure?
What I'm going to do, with your permission, is to signal first that the poverty reduction strategy that the Canadian government is currently
So I can help you then. It is all three, in fact, are included in the market basket measure. A Finance Canada briefing in 2015 suggested a carbon tax would create a cascading effect of higher prices on these very items. How much will a $50 a ton carbon tax increase the cost of a market basket measure that your department says is needed for a basic living?
Now I'll switch in French because I have a very interesting quotation making precisely those linkages between the importance of building a sustainable economy, both from a economic perspective and from
Does your department have any estimation of the increased costs of a market basket for an average family as a result of a $50 a ton carbon tax? Does that analysis exist within your department?
I'm not sure how this department, how this committee works, but normally when we ask questions, we normally listen to the answers, and I'm very willing and
we're not getting any so
feeling privileged to provide such
answers. Point of order here, Dan.
It would be nice if you actually allowed the minister to answer the question and not interrupt him.
I would concur with that, Pierre. If we could maybe let the minister actually get to his answer, that would be appreciated, please.
So I'll get to the answer you are looking for, but I think I should also get to the answer that we are all looking for when we look at the impact of the importance of building our economy in a sustainable manner. My quote here comes from Cenovus Energy.
Cenovus supports carbon tariffs. Carbon tariffs are one of the most equitable means and the most effective means of promoting innovation in order to reduce GHG emissions.
Pricing carbon pollution, we must be looking for ways that are both efficient
With
and
respect,
equitable.
Mr. Chair, we have allowed the minister to go on at length. The question was the impact of a $50 a ton carbon tax on a basic market basket of goods people need for a living, and he's come back with a quote from a CEO of a multinational oil and gas company, which is very interesting, but not terribly interesting to people who are struggling to purchase a market basket of goods they need to survive. There's no surprise that a CEO of Cenovus can pay the carbon tax. I'm asking about poverty, which you were tasked to address in the mandate letter you received from the Prime Minister. So, for the third time, can you tell us what will be the increase in the market basket cost for a family once the imposition of a $50 a ton carbon tax is complete?
If you were to join my former life with my current life, you will also make the connection between a policy that need to be both equitable and effective in sending the right signals to our businesses and workers, as well as protecting the welfare of our more vulnerable Canadians.
So you don't have an answer to the question.
You've seen in recent months exactly what type of policies these can be. The CCB and the cut in middle-class taxes have been arranged through increases in the taxes that we're asking high-income Canadians to make, and decreases in the family benefits we were sending to families of millionaires.
Mr. Chair, the question was about the carbon tax. He's now talking about child care benefits. Speaking of the low-income cutoff line, which is what you've used to make your claims about reduced poverty for children, Statistics Canada's officials testified here that cost increases for things like food, fuel, and electricity would necessarily increase the number of people below the low-income cutoff line. How many additional Canadians will fall below the low-income cutoff line, that is the poverty line, as a result of increased costs from your carbon tax?
About 30 seconds, sir.
I would frame the question differently. I would say, how many low-income Canadians will be lifted out of poverty because of the resources that provinces and territories will receive from taxing a bad thing, which is carbon pollution, and handing out support to families of middle class and lower income Canadians. So how many of these Canadian families will be lifted out of poverty because provinces and territories will have more resources to do so?
Excuse me. First, that's time. Second, we have a point of order from Mark Warwa.
Thank you, Chair. I think this meeting, and I do appreciate ministers being here to answer questions, but if they answer the questions, I think this meeting will run a lot more effectively and efficiently. For a minister to not answer questions is a disservice to this committee.
I don't disagree with that at all. I'd also like all the committee members to be listening to the answers and not interrupting the ministers as well. In conjunction with that, we could all do better. Now we're over to Mr. Rumi, please.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to address Minister Hajdu. Minister, sometimes workers in jobs are in jobs where there's little opportunity for wage growth and upwards mobility. Maybe a stable job, but it could be in an industry that is on the decline. There are workers that may wonder to themselves, if I just had a little bit more support to get training or upgrade my skills, I would grab that opportunity. Indeed, I'm personally one that took advantage of that program about 7 years ago in a self-employment program. That had that program not been available to me, I likely would not have been sitting in this position here today. There are plenty of adults who want to be prepared to move on from one job to a better one. Could you go into detail about what the government is doing to help these adult learners?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And like you, I mean, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart as someone who got my first degree from a university at 28 years old with 2 children in tow as a single mother. It was a struggle and it was very difficult. I was lucky I had some supports in terms of family and that kind of thing. But nonetheless, it increased my earning potential dramatically. I went from a place where I was able to now, provide for my children in an equitable way as to their peers. And in fact, now both of them have college diplomas. So when I talk about breaking intergenerational poverty, this is key. And so I'm excited about the measures that we're taking to support adult learners, to support people that want their next job to be a better job. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that that it's easier for them to get the financial support that they need through improvements to Canada's student loans and grants that will allow part-time students or people that are that have dependent children to receive a bit more financial security so that they can take that leap into the unknown and take on the additional stresses of being a student in as an older person. And also we want to make sure that when people are on unemployment insurance, they have options that include education and retraining. And that's why we'll be making changes to employment insurance so that people can receive EI payments while they go back to school. This is something that I think is very prudent for this government to do because what it recognizes is that people need opportunities and support to invest in themselves. And when they invest in themselves, the dividends are immense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To Minister Duclos, as you know, this committee has studied poverty across Canada in recent months and has heard about the need for the Canadian government to return to the table to play a leadership role in housing. It's definitely something we heard when the committee visited my riding of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge earlier this year to learn from our experiences. Investing in affordable housing is about making life better for Canadian families and helping them to succeed. For Canadian families, a safe, affordable home means building healthier lives, more opportunities for jobs, and helping our communities prosper. Could you please elaborate on the measures that the government is taking in action in the field of housing and fighting against poverty? There's a lot of folks out there that we hear the numbers, we hear the billions, but I don't know if they actually really understand how that applies to them.
Thank you. I'm delighted to speak about this, and I would like to indicate that not only are the resources, of course, important, but more importantly, I think, are 2 additional things. First, the renewed leadership, and I would say, in fact, the most effective demonstration of federal housing leadership in 4 decades, which is going to be significantly impacting the welfare and the well-being of our families, businesses, and communities. In addition to that, the incredible opportunities that this will generate for other partners to collaborate with the federal government. I, of course, include here provinces and territories, but also municipalities and cities, which have been so voiceful and so effective in the last year in signaling how important investments in housing on the part of the federal government are to them, to their communities, to their businesses, and to their families. And in addition to cities and municipalities, the social and the private sectors, the importance of which we often underestimate when it comes to housing investments. So this is going to lead over time, because it will going to take some time, to lead to renewed collaboration and renewed leadership in the field of housing. And maybe let me mention very briefly some of the lines along which those investments will manifest themselves. So renewed partnership between the federal government and provinces and territories in the long term, which PTs have asked for. A new $5 billion national housing fund, which will help address critical housing issues in collaboration with other departments in this government in order to support, for instance, seniors, handicapped families, Canadians living in circumstances of family violence, to support also other types of infrastructure investments that we're making in transit, in green infrastructure, in transport corridors, targeted housing support for Indigenous people and people living in the north, renewed and expanded investments to combat and prevent homelessness. And here the word partnership is again extremely important, using surplus federal lands and buildings for the development of affordable housing. And finally, important investments in CMHC's role to become and to stay a leader in the field of housing over time in Canada. We know how important it is to have proper data and proper understanding of how housing matters for families and communities. We know this in the context of current significant pressures in some of our regions in Canada. We want CMHC to play a better role when it comes to informing and supporting the development of our communities.
Thank you, Minister. We have time for a very brief question, if that's okay, from Madame Sanssouci, please.
Brève à quel point?
Pardon?
Combien de temps?
Je vais remercier rapidement.
I'll very quickly thank the 3 ministers and their teams for their presentations today. Mr. Duclos, last time you appeared before the committee, we talked about how important it was to define poverty before tackling it. I concede that since then I have attended a number of debates in the House, and I think we will also need a definition of what the middle class is. It is understood in widely different ways, and we're working with a very elastic definition of middle class. My other comment is this. You pointed out that the committee travelled across Canada during the study on poverty, and we also heard from almost all organizations and municipalities that we met how important they considered it was for levels of government to work together. That leadership, in my view, can come only from the federal government. We have heard that investment is not the only issue. It's how funds are invested and how we achieve those goals. You're right to highlight the impact of the Canada Child Benefit and the number of children who've come out of poverty. But I've worked with children in difficulty, and to me, a poor child means a poor parent. The two cannot be separated. As critic, my colleagues tell me about many situations where families have their CCB cut because the child is placed in a foster home for 3 weeks or 1 week even, and it takes them 3 months to get their benefits back. Or if there's a document missing for one child, all 5 children are cut off. So I hear about all kinds of situations like that. The last comment before I come to my question, you talked about the guaranteed income supplement, and I believe you still believe it should be provided automatically to those who need it. That's necessary in my view. You talked about investing in communities. When we talk about infrastructure, let's not forget that in my riding, the largest community has 56,000 people. And when you talk about infrastructure, I wonder whether you are concerned about having funding set aside for the smallest communities, because they are less able than larger communities to work on projects. Sometimes only 2 people are available to work on a given project, and they're often not at the table because as soon as they start, the major cities have submitted
3 minutes, but I will allow for a question as long as it's brief. Minister Duclos, please.
Merci beaucoup. Évidemment, j'aurais...
Thank you. I would very much like to give you a full and comprehensive answer. I'd like to thank you for what you've done and the work the committee has done on poverty. The information you have on how benefits help families are valuable, and I would be grateful if you could convey them to members of my team so that the department does what it has to do and thus ensure that federal Canadian government benefits go to the families that need them. Regarding assistance for small communities, you'll see that the Government Infrastructure Program has set aside $2 billion for small communities. Because, as you said, for all kinds of reasons, small communities have greater difficulty in getting the funding they need from the Canadian government, and that is something we've targeted with that funding. With regard to definitions of poverty and the middle class, I am listening to your suggestions. I hear them, I hear you, and I know you're working very hard on defining middle class in the work that the committee is doing. That definition is very necessary because it's a question of credibility. When we talk about poverty and policies to reduce it, we need to know what we're talking about.
Apologize to the ministers, but unfortunately we do have to get in our seats momentarily to vote. We will be back. The committee will be back. Whether the ministers will be able to join us or not, I would suspect probably not, considering your other commitments. But I imagine the other department heads will be here. If you can come back, great. But we do have to suspend for votes, and we will be back. Everybody, we're going to have to.
I have life insurance, but it's not that extensive.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm teasing
Welcome
you
back.
because I was told not to make eye contact with you. So
Okay.
That's why.
Yes. Don't be doing that. Okay. So we have I think a few more moments before bells start again here. But thank you everybody for coming back. We're going to get started. Actually.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The schedule indicates that the ministers are with us until 2 o'clock today.
Schedule, what was agreed upon was they be here for one round of questioning, and then they had to get to prep for the question period. And unfortunately,
well, yeah, it does say from noon to 2 here, and it includes their names below.
Is when the meeting is conducted. Yes, we do have the officials here, and would like to get going with questions again. Bob?
Yeah, I'm just following up on what my colleague had just brought up. We originally agreed to this. We agreed for a full set of questions for our entire opposition lineup to ask the minister questions.
I agree.
We've only been gone for about 10 minutes, which gives them lots of time to answer questions and still get back to question period. The schedule agreed upon was till 2. We knew that we had a lot to do in this period of time. Now, we certainly had a lot more time between our committee business and 12 o'clock. We had another half an hour that we could have easily had the ministers in a little bit earlier. I just find it troubling that it seems to be that they're using this as an excuse to not come back because there was votes. I certainly would call upon you then, if this is what's happening, that we have the ministers reappear and provide adequate time for us to ask questions.
Okay. I think we can discuss that. Is there any other thoughts around whether we'd want the ministers to reappear? I mean, guys, let's be honest. This is not how we wanted this to go either, and it's. We've been gone for significantly longer than 10 minutes. I'm afraid to disagree with you, but we've been gone for nearly half an hour. And apparently we have another motion coming as we speak. So I think that
if I just may add, before we adjourned, you did indicate that the ministers would not be here.
I said it was likely they would not come back.
And I didn't hear any comments.
Yeah.
Nobody's insisting that they be back.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Bob.
What was discussed at committee here and saying that they're not coming back is something that we agreed to be clear. Mm-hmm. When we agreed to have the ministers here, we agreed on the basis that we would all have a chance to ask the ministers questions. Because you said that they weren't coming back doesn't mean that we agreed to it, to be fair. Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to have the ministers back to fully and adequately answer questions before committee. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure that our timetable allows for that, but we can definitely look into that and see. I would have to look at the calendar. I don't know if the ministers would be. This was the date that we could get the ministers here in the room. Like I said, the events of this morning have not anticipated, and would have liked to have. I know that everybody would have liked to have asked questions of the ministers. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to happen today. But we do have the department officials, and I would request that we before we do get called away again, do in fact ask the questions to the department officials. Mr. Rumi?
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Zimmer?
Yeah, on the same point over. I guess I'm looking for an answer of whether the ministers are going to be requested to appear at committee again. Is that still up in the air? Because I'm asking you to ask them to reappear, Mr. Chair.
Fair enough.
I think it's fair enough to say that we as opposition are asking for that to happen.
Okay.
So we would like that to be asked of the ministers.
What I can commit to you today, Bob, is we will look at the schedule. We will see if there's an opportunity. We have until May 31st in order to have these meetings before the deadline. If there is a day that allows us to do that, that doesn't infringe on the commitments we have with other commitments with this committee, and that the ministers would be able to actually meet that schedule, then I think everybody would like to have that. But I can't. I mean, I can't have that.
Point of order.
I can't say that at this point. That yes, we can do it on this day, and yes, the ministers can arrive.
I'm just
We don't
asking
have
it to
that
be
yet.
asked, Mr. Chair.
Fair enough.
and-
Yeah.
Point of order.
Yeah.
This happens when we have witnesses. We can't control what goes on in the House, and we don't call back witnesses. So I'm failing to understand why this is even an issue right now. The chair controls the agenda. We are at the mercy of what happens in the House. So I'm not sure why we're even contemplating this right now.
Point of
We
order.
don't call
I
back
think,
other
I think
witnesses.
Dan, for giving me that power, but in fact, this committee actually controls the agenda.
That's right.
I don't quite have that much power yet, but no, I'm just.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, we're not talking about a House of Commons interruption of committee proceedings that prevented the ministers from finishing their testimony. They were told in writing they would be here till 2 o'clock. It's 1:25. There's 35 minutes left in the period that was allocated for the ministers to appear. Now, I appreciate that they might want to get out the back door as quickly as possible rather than answer those questions, but let's not create a phony pretense based on false logistics. The House of Commons, for the millions of fans who are watching back home, is 90 seconds down the hallway. And they could be back here by now. They could have taken a round of questioning by now.
I cannot speak for the ministers. You, as being a former minister, know perfectly well that there are things that they need to do prior to question period, and that is my only assumption, is that they are preparing for question period, and I'm not going to speculate as to why they aren't here. Can we please get back to the reason we are here today? I'd like to welcome, and I apologize I didn't recognize you to begin with, but from the witnesses now at the table from the Department of Employment and Social Development, Louise Livonian, Deputy Minister, welcome. Laurie Sterling, Deputy Minister, Labour Program, and Leslie McLean, Senior Associate Deputy Minister and Chief Operating Officer for Service Canada. We also have, I believe, Chief Financial Officer, ESDC, Mark Perlman has joined us, as well as Minister Zelonka, CFO and Senior Vice President, Capital Markets, is also here. Welcome to all of you. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Mr. Siddall as well. Sorry, Evan Siddall. How can I forget you, sir? You've been here so often. I would have just assumed we would have announced you already. From Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation's Evan Siddall, President and Chief Executive Officer. I believe that we ended off with cutting off Bridget Sanssouci, so she still actually has a few minutes left, but seeing that she is not here, we're moving on to Mr. Long for 6 minutes. Is also not at his, yes. Mr. Long, you're up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. And again, I apologize for the tone and line of questioning from my counterpart across there earlier. When I decided to run for politics, I wanted to give back to my community. And I was involved with sports and hockey before that. And we did certain things like food drives, cereal drives, coat drives to try to give back to those in need. And I felt compelled to try to do more, so I wanted to run. And one of the first places I went when I started my campaign was to priority neighborhoods. And I started knocking on doors and talking to families. St. John does lead the country in child poverty. We have a lot of issues with housing, affordable housing, certainly lots of challenges. In fact, some of our priority neighborhoods, Wards 3 and Ward 4, have child poverty of 50, 60, 70%. So going door to door, I asked a lot of those families about boutique tax credits like credits for dance or credits for hockey lessons. And I was looked at, to be perfectly honest and transparent, with dismay. A lot of people in those communities, no, they couldn't afford to take their children to dance lessons or hockey. They were trying to survive on a day-to-day basis. I asked those same families if the doubling of the tax-free savings account would be beneficial for them. Again, I couldn't find a family in a priority neighborhood that invested in a tax-free savings account, let alone the doubling of it. So, to you and your staff, I want to thank you for your vision. I want to thank you that our government is moving forth with a national poverty reduction strategy. I think that transformational change comes from national initiatives. I thank you from my heart to coming to St. John on September 2nd and announcing the Tackling Poverty Together initiative, which talks to people with lived experience, consults people with lived experience, and is very inclusive. And for us to develop a national poverty reduction strategy, we need to have everybody involved. And what I saw going door to door initially was despair, no hope, and a group of people that lived in poverty that were forgotten by the previous government. And I believe that things such as the Canada Child Benefit, which is better for 9 out of 10 families, which helps those living in need, is transformational and will continue to make a difference. And in particular, this budget, Budget 2017, when the minister stood up and talked about the significant, historic amount of investment in affordable housing to come up with a national housing strategy. St. John has 1,300 people on a wait list for affordable housing. And over the past 10 years, that number has continued to grow and grow. So the fact that we announced money for a national housing strategy, I think, is another transformational measure. I was also thrilled, and my question to you today is about early learning and childcare. In St. John Rothsay, I work alongside with Aaron Schreier from Literacy New Brunswick and Shiloh Boucher from the YMCA, and we've developed a early learning pilot called Learning Together that we feel will be transformational. And my question to the committee would be, can you talk to me more about the investments you are making in early learning and childcare? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. As you likely know, the 2017 budget announced $7 billion for early learning and childcare, and this is in addition to the $500 million that had been announced in Budget 2016. So that's a total of $7.5 billion for early learning and childcare. The components of that are that there is approximately $5 billion that is for funding to go to the provinces and territories for an early learning and childcare framework that we are working with the provinces right now to develop and finalize. And
elaborate a little bit on the plan moving forward of working with the provinces, how that will go.
Sure. So do you want me to just finish the?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So, and then another significant part of that would be $100 million over the period for innovation. So innovations around early learning and childcare, and then another $95 million for better data to be able to assess the impacts of the funding that would be provided, and then a further, it'll be $100 million next year, and then I believe it's $130 million and $130 million going out for the 10-year for Indigenous early learning and childcare as well. And what we have been doing over the last while, initially with the provinces and territories, is discussing what an early learning and childcare framework could look like. So what are the components, quality, care, availability, who the focus should be, is it most in need, et cetera. And that framework is being developed and is fairly close. And we would then agree with the provinces on this framework, and following that there would be bilateral agreements that we would have with the provinces, and funds would be transferred, and we would ensure also, working with the provinces and territories, that outcomes are achievable and that we are tracking outcomes for Canadians to ensure that that's being done.
Thank you.
Sorry,
we are out of time there. Maybe if we come back around, we'll get to the second part there. For the next 6 minutes, Member of Parliament Dillon, please. I was promoting you there.
La question va être au.
This question is to the people representing the Minister for Families, Workforce and Development. We heard at the last meeting that women are underrepresented in the skills trades in Canada. And Canada, with regard to women's representation in the labour force, is low among OECD countries. Canadian mothers and those with young children who are less likely to be part of the labour force. In Canada, that figure is lower than high-performing OECD countries. Women with children are often unable to fully take part in the labour market because of the work-life balance and lack of childcare. Can you please tell us what initiatives this government is taking to advance equal opportunity among men and women since the Liberals came into power, based on the analysis used for Budget 2017? I'll begin, and my colleague might have something to add. A number of measures, many measures have been taken for women. For the first time in the budget, there is a very specific a gender-based analysis to see what the impact of the budget will be on women. I'll leave those details for the Department of Finance. With regard to ESDC, there are, of course, measures being taken, such as the Canada Child Benefit. Minister Duclos mentioned it. Then the subject we were just discussing, the Early Learning and Childcare Framework. We've talked about that. There have also been measures for EI, as well as measures for seniors' benefits. We have increased benefits for single persons, many of whom are women. A large percentage are women, and that amounts to an increase of $947 annually. There are also measures for homeless people. In Budget 27, there are measures for the homeless. And Laurie, do you have anything to add? Thank you very much for the question. From the standpoint of work, we do have consultations on pay equity that are underway that will help women. That's one of our priorities, and it is in the Minister's mandate letter, Minister Haidu's mandate letter. She is required to establish a pay equity system and work proactively towards pay equity. And that applies to all workplaces that come under federal legislation. That is a priority for us. Moreover, in the most recent budget, the 2017 budget, the government announced policies on flexi work.
Reforms to assist in making the workplace more flexible, which generally favors women in the workplace who tend to enter and exit, including a right to request flexible work, including leaves, for example, for family care. So those would be 2 additional measures, plus an extension on maternity leave, which would be protected in the Canada Labour Code. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Could you also kindly provide details on what measures the 2017 budget contains to help mothers and families, like parental leave, for example? In the area of employment insurance, there was more flexibility for women. We do provide more flexibility for women. We have added flexibility, and women can now take parental leave, maternity leave 12 weeks before birth. They could have, previously that period was 8 weeks, and now it's 12 weeks before the birth. The benefit period has also increased from 12 months to 18 months, with the last 6 months being at a somewhat lower level. Those are the 2 principal measures. What about compassionate leave? I didn't understand the question. Compassionate leave, people helping caregivers, acting as caregivers for close family members, and I believe that we added 15 weeks for cases of compassionate leave where someone is acting as a caregiver to someone in critical condition, and that is in addition to the weeks already in place. Existing benefits remain, and they are expanded by 15 weeks. There are also changes to the I-Plan, 17 weeks. Their work under the Canadian Labour Code, their jobs are going to be protected for 17 weeks.
To MP Poilievre, please.
Mr. Chair, if I could begin by apologizing on behalf of my colleague across the way for taking so much time and leaving so little for our witnesses to respond to his comments earlier on. I'd like to ask the Deputy Minister of Employment and Social Development, Ms. Livonian, does the department have any data on the effect of a $50 a ton carbon tax on the cost of a market basket?
Okay. So I think the minister responded to, I think, many back and forths on that, but what I would add is that obviously we're in the process of elaborating a poverty reduction strategy. Part of that elaboration is to determine what the best measures are. And once that elaboration has happened and we have a sense of what the best measurement of poverty reduction is, then would be the opportune time to see what the impact would be from those kind of things on that kind of measure.
In the case of the market basket measurement, is there data?
So like I said, that specific measure hasn't been determined to be the best measure or the measure that we would end up using as a target or something that we would use, so it's premature to determine.
The minister mentioned a 40% reduction in child poverty as a result of the Canada Child Benefit. On what date did the child benefit, this new benefit, arrive with Canadian families?
Like when did the CCB, when did it start? I think it was July 1st, 2017? 2016.
And the 40% reduction in child poverty rates, that's over what period of time?
I'll just ask my colleague to come up and answer those specific questions.
It's the impact.
I mean,
Can we hold the clock?
the base of what the situation was pre the implementation of the CCB and then post. So we would look at data from 2014, 2015, and then look at what the impact would be post the implementation of the CCB.
Well, I have no doubt that it would be post and pre, but what was the starting point and the end point?
So the starting point would be, we looked at data for from what I understand, 2014, 2015, and then the post would be 2016, 2017.
So, because I have the table here that your department gave the minister on this very question, and it starts in 2013. It goes to 2017. Does that sound right?
Does that sound right? Yeah. So it's over a period of time.
So the reductions actually, and I note here that about half of the reduction in child poverty then would have occurred prior to the Canada Child Benefit actually arriving on July 2016.
So there are fluctuations in the level of child poverty over time.
Right. It's just that the reduction that you're citing starts in 2013 and ends in 2017.
Right.
Half of the reduction in poverty that your minister was boasting of occurred before his child benefit actually took effect, according to the table that your department provided him with in a briefing note last year.
Yeah, so I think, like I was saying, that the period of time is reasonably accurate that I think you're talking about. This is all based on data that has lags, right? So you look at the data when you have it, and then it needs to be adjusted. So there is a change from one year to the next as to how many children are in poverty prior and before, and then you get to the point where, okay, there's been adjustment, you look at what the impact will be again, and of course that varies over time.
The final question then, is it fair to attribute to the child benefit a reduction in poverty that actually occurred before the benefit came into effect?
Very, very brief answer, please.
So the answer would be that there is definitively an impact as a result of the CCB on child poverty. There's no question. The data shows that. The exact number, as it will change over time, if there's a forecast, and then there's years later an actual what the impact. For all we know, the impact could be 50% by the time we have all the data accumulated, etc.
Thank you. Ramesh.
So my question goes to Minister of Employment, Workforce and Development. See, I started living in Canada after coming as an immigrant, upgraded my law degree, but it took me nearly more than 6 years to complete my law degree and again come into the legal profession. So generally the immigrants, those who come from with the foreign credentials, their credentials are not getting updated in a timely manner. So what they have to do it, they go for some other jobs which are not as per their own professional qualifications. So they go for small jobs, for less payable jobs. So my question to you is that can you take us through the system which we are, I know that some system is coming into place, and what program approaches are there which you are going to follow in an innovative way, and how they are going to be effective?
Right. So I think you're talking about the Foreign Credential Recognition Program.
Yes, please.
Unfortunately, I'm not 100% familiar with the program. Like I'm familiar with the very high level, but you're looking at what are the specifics. I know we provide support. I know we provide. There's I think micro grants that are provided, and I think that also we're in the process of providing assistance from a loan perspective as well to ensure that individuals have sufficient resources to be able to take the necessary courses, etc. But do we have somebody here on?
The credentials will be recognized now as per the new program?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
is it your opinion that their credentials will be recognized as per the new programs which you are going to adopt?
So looking at what the program does and what supports there are to recognize foreign credentials is something that we provide assistance for. The recognition of credentials is done throughout the country by provinces and territories in different ways. And one of the things we are doing is working with the provinces and territories to try and provide best practices, to potentially convene the provinces and territories so that we could have a consistent approach to foreign credential recognition. So when you say, would the new program recognize foreign credentials specifically right away, that's not something that the program would do itself. It's something that we need to work with the provinces and territories with to ensure that that we're doing it in the fastest, most efficient way possible. And there's actually a stream of work that we're doing right now with the provinces and territories to try and ameliorate that process.
Okay, I know that nearly 2 weeks back, Minister Hadju and Mr. Hussain from Immigration and Citizenship Minister, they were there in Brampton, in my riding, in my city. And there were announcements regarding the immigration new system for those people, those who are coming as immigrants. So can you update on those?
So we are working with our colleagues at Immigration and Refugee Canada as well. I don't have that part of the information with me, but what I can do is ask that we put a little paper together articulating the work that we're doing and what specifically those aspects are. If you like, we can provide that to the committee.
Sure. Could you please provide that to the committee? Thank you very much.
Nicolas.
Merci,
You have about 2 minutes, sir.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was to Minister Qualtrough. I saw in her presentation something I appreciated. I would, by the way, like to thank all of you for the excellent work put into your presentation. They were instructive and very, very much appreciated. I saw comments regarding the Federal Program on Accessibility, the project that's being announced. There are many expectations for it. I wonder whether you could give me some idea of the stages to come until that project becomes legislation. Tell us something about it, please. Thank you very much for the question. As Ms. Qualtrough said, we spent 9 months consulting Canadians across Canada, in the north as well. The next step is to produce a report in the spring or fall that will set out everything we heard. After that stage, we will consult on the report, and after that, we will come up with the legislation. As Ms. Qualtrough said, that we're hoping to see that by early 2018. Do we have any idea of the main features of the accessibility legislation to come? I understand you, but there are provincial statutes on this. So could you give me some idea when it comes to the federal statute? What broad themes would it comprise? There is legislation in Quebec, in Ontario. This year there will be legislation in Nova Scotia, and there is some in Manitoba. Those statutes differ somewhat, but one thing they do have in common, or more than one thing that they do have in common, is standards. Standards for technology, employment, transport. And with those standards, which are different in all the provinces, organizations give people accessibility.
A few minutes at the end. Mark, I know your question is up, but I need at least 3 minutes to wrap some stuff up. So if you get a minute and a half, you can
that'd be perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. The minister has said last year we brought back the age of eligibility for old age security to 65, which will prevent 100,000 vulnerable seniors from falling into severe poverty. When did this take effect? My understanding it was 2003 to 2009. This change from 65 to 67 was to take effect. And so if the government is changing it back to 65 now, then the phase-in doesn't start to 2023. Am I correct in saying the status quo is 65, and therefore the change has zero effect on OAS benefits to Canadian seniors? Right now, 2016 and 2017, there is no effective benefit to seniors right now, because what was proposed was in the future and it's been scaled back. So there was no benefit to seniors regarding reducing the age back to 65. Is that correct?
Brief answer, please.
Okay, my understanding is that it would have been the impact at the time of implementation. So it would have been whether it was 65 and then brought to 67 and then brought back to 65. The impact would have been at the time of implementation.
Right now, 2017, it does not have an effect.
There was no impact on...
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, that leaves me exactly 3 minutes. Thank you, Mark. We do have a vote scheduled for today on estimates. I'm going to suggest that we defer those until we can determine whether or not we can get the ministers back. I don't think it makes a lot of procedural sense to vote on these now and then have the ministers come back at a later date. Can I get everybody's agreement that that makes sense? Okay. All right.
Clarify what you just asked us again, Chair, because I think
so. We have votes on the estimates. The votes are pardon? The May 31st. So we have time between now and then. If we need to, if for whatever reason we can't get the ministers back, we can add this to a later date session of this committee. Any other questions?
What are you asking for? Exactly.
I'm just saying we're not going to vote. It's more of a clarification.
Okay.
So we're not voting on these today.
Yeah.
We could, but it wouldn't make sense to then bring the ministers back to speak with us.
Okay.
Fair enough? Okay. I adjourn for the day. Thank you, all of you, for coming and sharing your time with us today. Thank you to all the committee members and all the support staff. We may be seeing you again shortly. Adjourned.